Thank you. My name's Boz. I'm an alcoholic. I'm glad I know that today. I'm grateful to be recovering in Alcoholics Anonymous today. My sobriety date is April 30th, 1994. I actually had my first spiritual awakening on April 18th of 1994, and that happened, I was being handcuffed while I was face down on the hood of a state police cruiser, getting processed for my third DUI. And I knew the gig was up. I knew the shit was going to hit the fan, and I knew that the way I'd been living my life was over. And my spiritual awakening was that I got to stop drinking. I can't do it alone. I got to get some help. And this Officer Oliver processed me. I tried to get him to let me go. You know, I'm just a couple points over, you know. And he didn't let me go, but he treated me with respect. And I'll never forget him telling me, and I knew this was, you need to get some help. You need to get some help. And he brought me home after he, did the deal. And for a week, I white-knuckled it. And it was not a fun place. It took me a week to get up the courage to get some help. And I drove around and looked for bridge abutments to drive my car into, and trees that I could smash my car into and just end it. I was in Vermont. I got sober in Vermont, and it was in the spring, and the river that ran through the town was full, and I thought I could just jump off this bridge and they'll find my bloated, bruised up body in the lake, and that'll be it. And thank God I didn't have the juice to do that. It seemed like the only way out. I got to that place it talks about in the big book where I couldn't imagine my life with alcohol and couldn't imagine my life without it. And suicide seemed like the easiest way out. And thank God I didn't do that. I've learned here that that's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So I'm working at I'm working at this this little warehouse, and my foreman Steve, he got two DUIs within like a year and a half of each other, and he got court ordered to AA. So he's one of the first persons I told that, you know, I got busted. And he said, well, you know, I've gone to some meetings. You know, the people are nice. They talk about God a lot, but you know, it's not that bad. They're nice enough. And I'm like, okay. So he told me where some meetings were. And I remember asking him, so, you know, you're supposed to be sober, so I can have a couple beers and I'm not drunk yet. Because that's not what they're talking about. So I wound up at my first meeting. The Serenity Group has a 6:30 beginners meeting, and I went to that on a Tuesday night. And there were about 7 people there. And I mean, I'll never forget, I didn't introduce myself as new, but I had no problem introducing myself as an alcoholic. But they could tell I was new. And the woman chairing the meeting said, it looks like we got a couple new people here. Why don't we read step 1? And I remember, you know, looking at that same poster right there, the steps, and I'm like, God, like, oh man, oh jeez, I wanted to run. I wanted to get the hell out of there, but I was afraid to go out there because I knew what was going to happen. I knew what was going to happen, and then I saw this part right here. It's underlined, as we understood him. Like, that's different. Wow. Wow. This might just work. This just might work. And I've gone to a lot of meetings over the years, and no one has told me that I have to believe in Jesus or Buddha or Allah or any of that. The only thing they've told me about my higher power is it can't be me. And I didn't have a problem with that. So we read step 1, and I'm like, wow, the dude who wrote this book really knows what he's talking about, you know. And I'll never forget that line. It's the line I read. Perhaps you're not an alcoholic after all. Why don't you go out and try some controlled drinking, bearing in mind what we've told you about alcoholism? It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It terrified me. Like, fuck, that's not going to work. Control my drinking? What's the point of that? I drank to get drunk from my first drink to my last. I was a beer-swilling pig. That's the way I drank. I drank for the effect. I learned to acquire a taste for it. So I'm like, well, I guess I gotta try this. And I'll never forget. There's this guy Steve at the meeting, and he was pretty quiet. And the chairperson said, "Hey, Steve, what's going on?" And Steve told this story about how his girlfriend walked in on him in the bathroom with the barrel of a shotgun in his mouth, trying to get the trigger with his toe. And she just looked at him and said, "You're sick. You need help." And he went from telling that to saying he was having a good day today. And I'd never heard anyone talk about suicide before. You know, so when I'm thinking of killing myself, when I'm looking for trees to smash my car into, and you know, bridge abutments to drive my car into, or you know, the raging river to jump into to end it, I was alone. I was the only one who thought like that and felt like that. And hearing someone else say that's where they started, because that's where I was, and I wanted what he had. A good day. One good day. Sounded like a pretty good deal to me. And after that meeting, a guy, Kurt L., reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's another meeting at 8 o'clock. Why don't you stick around?" And I figured the bag of dope in the glove compartment of my car would wait. So I'm like, yeah, okay, I can. This wasn't that bad. And the format at the Serenity Group on Tuesday nights is that the Tuesday night meeting, the big show at 8 o'clock, is a step meeting. We read step 2. And I'm thinking, oh, man. The chairperson of the first meeting talked to the chairperson of the second meeting and said, we got a live one here, let's reel him in. And as self-centered and, you know, full of my shit as I was, and now there's something going on here. There's something going on here. So at that first meeting, I was introduced to the concept that I was powerless over alcohol. Like, oh, that's what's going on. I thought it was just of low moral character. I thought it was just weak-willed. And like Steve said, at some point I'll have to stop, but you know, this is fun for now, so I'm just going to keep going with it. Last 5 years of my drinking wasn't a lot of fun. It was disgusting. It was pitiful, but I didn't know what else to do. So I had no idea that my problem was I was powerless over alcohol. And my life unmanageable? Yeah, I want to kill myself. That's pretty damn unmanageable, you know. So I had no problem with step 1, you know. And then we read step 2, and I'm like, I don't know, this God, like, oh, man. But I was all out of bright ideas, you know. My way wasn't working. I knew I needed help. And I was given a glimmer of hope. And I've never had to struggle with step 1 or step 2 as long as I've been sober. You know, that's grace. That's a gift. I was ready. They told me at the first meeting, if you don't like that dirty little 3-letter word, God, you know, substitute group of drunks or good orderly direction. Or they said gift of desperation. I did not like that one bit. This is not a gift. This sucks. This sucks. I don't like this. If this is a gift, I don't want it. I'm grateful for that gift now. I am so grateful for that gift now. It wasn't a lot of fun. when I was new. And it's not supposed to be fun. If being newly sober was supposed to be fun, supposed to be easy, supposed to be enjoyable, I might say, oh, well, that wasn't that bad. I can do this over again. It sucked. And it's supposed to suck. So I remember that I don't want to go through this again. There's a guy at the meeting I go to here in town, Danny, who he said something a couple months ago. I'm not here for the drinking I did before I found AA. I'm here for all the drinking I might do if I leave, if I stop coming. That's what I'm afraid of. And shit like that wouldn't have made any sense to me when I was drinking, but it makes a lot of sense to me now. So, you know, step 1 and 2, in my first day, you know, going to meetings, like, wow, that's pretty cool. Step 3 was a lot harder. I had to start my day over a lot. I still do sometimes. And what I can say about step 3 is I don't always know when I'm doing step 3, but I know when I'm not. I know when I'm not. I'm miserable, and people around me are afraid, and it's a shit show. And I can catch myself now and say, all right, a little less Boz, a little more God, that might be a good idea. So, you know, I'm going to meetings. I heard this 90 meetings in 90 days, and it sounded a little drastic to me. I'm thinking, you know, I'm a busy guy. I got a job, you know, I got things to do. I got young children. And this guy, Kurt, said, how many hours a day did you spend drinking? I said, oh, 7 or 8 at least. He goes, and you can't spare one of those hours now that you're not drinking to get your ass to a meeting? I couldn't argue with that logic. So, yeah, by the end of my first 90 days, I had something like 130 or 140 meetings. And the truth is, it's really the only place I felt safe the first couple months. It's the only place I felt like, you know, that my world isn't coming apart, and I could sit down and just be calm. And I'm so grateful that I came all the way in and I sat all the way down. I jumped in with both feet and started trying to work these steps, trying to live these steps. That's what my first sponsor was big on. We don't work the steps, we live them. Like Steve was saying, you know, I have to change. The same person will drink again. If I don't change, the same person will drink again. In the first week, I went to this meeting in downtown Burlington, and there was this speaker, just this amazing story. You could make a movie out of his story. It was just so fascinating. He got done telling about the debauchery and debacle and the shit show that was his bottom. Made mine look really, really pretty lame. And he looked right at me and he said, you know, now all I have to do is not drink, go to meetings, and change everything about myself. And I remember thinking, that sounds like a really good idea. I was so disgusted with myself when I got here. You know, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I'd been living that for the last 5 years. I knew that at some point this was going to have to end. I just didn't know how. And I am so lucky that the state police caught me and gave me a soft landing, because it could have been a lot worse. I've heard of a lot of people who've gone through a lot worse than I did. I hit a wimpy emotional bottom, you know. I couldn't stand living in my own skin. And now that what I've learned in AA is that's why I started drinking, because I couldn't stand living in my own skin. I was at a meeting, a noon meeting today, and the guy who led the meeting talked about fear. And like, holy shit. I'm tyrannized by fear. I was at a meeting a couple weeks ago, and this guy was visiting from Spokane, Washington, and he talked about how he has a maniacal brain. I'm like, yeah. And I was so relieved to hear it, because I have one too. You know, I came here with a drinking problem. I found out I have a thinking and a living problem. You know, I haven't had to take a drink in a long time. You know, I'm coming up on 25 years. And I'm not saying that to brag, but my point is that the thinking and living problem hasn't gone away. It hasn't. I'm stuck with it. I'm stuck with the shit that goes on between these ears. This finely tuned instrument causes me all the problems I'm ever going to have. I have a problem of perception. And there was this guy, Randy S., back where I came up, who, if you asked him how he was doing, he'd always say, a lot better than I think I am. Boy, isn't that true, you know? So a lot of these little, sayings and phrases are, quaint and they're coy and kind of funny, but, they've saved my ass so many times. The steps have saved my ass so many times. My MO is open mouth and insert foot, and, once in a while I actually keep my mouth shut. And I think, just because I think what I'm saying is important doesn't mean it is, and doesn't mean I have any right to share it with other people. I didn't know that before I got here. So, I just started doing the best I could, and I was going to meetings and doing the deal, trying to live this program the best I can, and I don't do much of a drunkalog, but there's a few highlights that bear mentioning. We all have the stories, the stuff that happened to us while we were drinking, and one of my favorites. And it took me years to be able to talk about this. I drank over this a lot. And after it happened, I swore this would never see the light of day. I was about 16 years old. It was in the middle of the summer. The two guys that I was running and gunning with had family stuff going on. It was a Wednesday night, I think. I was bored. I wanted to do something, Even if we didn't have money to drink or drug or anything, at least I could hang out with the guys and get into some trouble or something, But they were off, so I stole $5 out of my mother's purse and I hitchhiked down North Avenue to get to the shopping center where I knew I could buy a bag of dope. I got halfway there. My mother picks me up. I'm hitchhiking, going to get my shit, and my mother picks me up, and she's crying. It's not like she was out looking for me. She was going somewhere. I don't know where she was going. She didn't know where the hell I was. I just took off. And she picked me up, and she dropped me off at the shopping center, and she said, "So this is where you buy your drugs." And I got out of the car, and I went and bought the bag, and I smoked it all by myself. It didn't even occur to me to just give her money back and say, "I'm sorry." That just wasn't going to happen. That's what I did. That's what this disease did for me that day. My poor mother. That's what I did. That was more important than being a decent son. My boredom, being bored for one night, I couldn't put up with that. So I put my mother through hell. It was about the same time. Burlington, Vermont is a college town. The University of Vermont's there, the Champlain College is there, St. Michael's, so there's a whole bunch of frat houses. And I figured out that on Friday nights when they were having keg parties, they didn't care who came. If you had $1, they'd stamp your hand and you could drink. So I'm at this keg party at Sigma Nu, and I'm drinking to impress, I am pounding the beers down, I could drink, I could put them down. And I'm talking to this college girl, and we're hitting it off, And, she goes, "You like to drink, don't you?" I said, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Watch me. This is what I do." And things are going great. Things are going great, and I'm thinking, if I play my cards right, things might go my way tonight. And they probably would have. The only problem is I threw up on her. I threw up on her. It wasn't that funny. It is now. And I was so ashamed. And I never told anybody. I never talked about that. And I was probably 7 or 8 years sober before I had the juice to tell that story. But that's the kind of shit I did when I was drinking and drugging, running and gunning. That's the shit that happened. I had some fun too, you know. I am of a mind that if I hadn't discovered drugs and alcohol, I don't know that I would have survived, you know, my teens and my 20s. I don't think I would have made it. I had no idea how miserable I was until working these steps and trying to live this program. I can look back at my behavior and see what the hell was actually going on. Causes and conditions. There's this guy, the old-timer Joe P., when I came up, who used to say, this program works a lot better if I don't drink. And I'm like, what kind of mumbo-jumbo double talk is that? It makes perfect sense to me now, you know. I can't do any of this stuff if I'm under the influence. I can't. There's not a chance. Drinking is just a symptom of what's really wrong with me, this thinking and living problem that I've got. You know, that's what I'm glad I know today. I know what alcoholism looks like in my life today. I'm not, you know, I'm not pouring alcohol down my throat to deal with the crazy. I'm trying to develop a relationship with a higher power. When I first came in, I'm struggling with this God stuff. I realized that it's probably a really good idea, but I don't know how the hell to do it. And I got some really good suggestions. This woman pulled me aside one night and she said, you know, you get to choose your higher power. Why don't you choose a really awesome one, really good one, a really kind one, a really loving one, one who wants only the best for you? If you get to choose, why wouldn't I choose a good one? You know, I remember I had no use for religion when I was a kid because I knew I was screwed. Like, that's too hard, you know. You know, going to heaven, I'm already screwed. I might as well have fun on my way out, you know. So I got to AA and found out that it doesn't have to be that way. This is a spiritual program, not a religious program, and I'm glad I know the difference today. I'm glad I know what that means to me today, for me, because I get to choose. I get to choose. You know, I was given some really good suggestions. Kurt Linderman, a really good man, took me under his wing when I was new. Used to, you know, pick me up and bring me to work. Used to bring me to meetings. I'm talking. I don't know how do I pray? He said, "Why don't you try this? Get up in the morning, get on your knees, and say, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you are. I'm not even sure I believe in you, but help me not drink today." Okay, I can do that. That's the kind of relationship I can have with a higher power that I get to choose, who only wants the best for me, you know. So I can talk to him that way. So, you know, my favorite prayer these days is, little help here, you know. And that works. That works. Just take a second out and just ask for a little bit of help. And it always works. I have to wait a couple minutes for it to get a little better sometimes. And I'm the guy that sits in front of the microwave and says, I don't have all second, you know. I based my life from 14 years old on instant gratification. You know, the moment I took a hit or the moment I took a drink, I got that warm glow, that warm feeling. You know that feeling. The problem is it doesn't last, and the problem is it only means more. It only asks for more, and there's not enough. There's never enough. I remember getting, you know, in the beginning, getting that warm glow and being able to bask in it a little bit. But, you know, the last 5 years of my drinking, I overshot the mark every time. Every time. Passed right by it and got to, you know, just a drunken stupor. That's what's left in a drink or a drug for me. There's nothing good left in a drink or drug for me. Nothing I want to experience. I used up all the good there ever was going to be for me. a long, long time ago, and I know that today. Nothing I want to experience. And like I said, I had a pretty soft landing, you know. I got here before I lost everything. You know, at the end of my drinking, I was sleeping in my car. At least I had a car to sleep in, you know. And I had a job, you know, so I could at least, you know, have a little, you know, little something to eat, little sustenance. But most of my money went for drugs and alcohol. So Steve was talking about his sobriety date, and you know, the shit hit the fan on April 18th, 1994, when I got my third and last DUI so far. But I kept smoking pot. You know, me and pot were tight. I had this love affair with pot, and it was my drug of choice. Alcohol brought me to my knees, and I love using the two together. I know this is Alcoholics Anonymous, but this is my story, you know. There are very few true alcoholics left, you know. So my last drink was April 18th, 1994. But my sobriety date is April 30th, 1994. So I was smoking pot for 12 days. And my first sponsor, well, the first time I sat down with him, he asked me what my sobriety date was. And I tried to sell him on a 2 sobriety date theme, you know. I go, well, April 18th is my sobriety date. But April 30th is important too, because that's the day I stopped smoking pot. And he just looked at me and he kind of shook his head. He said, you got to pick one. I'm not going to tell you which one to pick, but you got to pick one. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful. I mean, that guy, that he gave me that. He didn't say, no, your date is this, because I would have gotten a resentment on that. I would have got a resentment over him making me give up those 12 days, you know. Those 12 days were big, you know. That was... So I said, okay, it's April 30th. And I had to go to my home group and change my sobriety date. And I was so embarrassed. I explained to this woman, you know, you got to change my date. She goes, it's okay. It's okay. I didn't drink. It's okay. It's okay. And I'm all right with that now, you know. It's a lesson I needed to learn. And I can't have a relationship with the higher power if I'm under the influence of mood or mind-altering drugs. Like I said, I got to a place that it talks about in the Big Book where I couldn't imagine my life with the alcohol and couldn't imagine my life without it. Today I'm standing here and I can't imagine my life without my higher power. That scares the shit out of me. So picking up, I lose that. I know I will lose my relationship, my conscious contact with God as I understand Him, the God of my choosing, the God that wants nothing but what's good for me. And I have a decent relationship with my higher power, but my higher power has a sense of humor. And he's got me on a long leash, so I can get up a pretty good head of steam before I get pulled back. And that's me. That's not God doing that to me. That's me. You know, my higher power gave me free will, and that's why I need Him. And these are the things I'm glad I know today, and these are the things that I had no concept of before I got here. So I'm doing the deal. I'm not drinking. I'm not drugging. I'm treating other people the way I'd like to be treated. Oh, boy, I don't know about that. I got this job, this dream job, 20 years ago now. I got a Class A CDL, and I'm driving big trucks. And I drove over the road for a number of years, and that was really cool. And then I got a job where I was home every night, working out of a terminal just a couple minutes from my house, making good money, benefits and union and the whole deal. And I'm taking this load up through St. Albans and over into Champlain, New York, and I had to stop at the creamery in St. Albans, Vermont. And It's a bitch of a place to back a 53-foot trailer into. You have to pull across a set of railroad tracks into oncoming traffic, get your back of your trailer close to the alleyway so you can back in. And I'm driving down Lake Street, and there's this Volvo right on my ass. And then he turns on Federal Street, and he's right on my ass. And then I turn on Air Street, and he's right on my ass. Like, this son of a bitch. I put my four-ways on, I slow down, I pull across, do what I'm doing, and he drives right around behind me. And I lost my shit. Like, what is wrong with you? What the hell is wrong with you? I jump out of the truck. What are you doing? What's the matter with you? You stupid blah, 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 blah. And, you know, God spoke to me through that kid in his mother's Volvo. I didn't like what God had to say. God said, "Get back in the truck, old man." And it took the wind out of my sails, just like, oh, man. You know, I'm used to God speaking to me through you people, and your delivery is a lot better than this little guy. I was ready to pull this guy out of the window of his car and teach him a lesson. That's not sober. That's not sober. But what I know now, looking back at that, at the end of the day, I took an inventory over what happened. What the hell's going on here? What is this? Because it didn't feel very good as I'm walking back to my truck, like, old man, yeah. Thanks, God. I didn't like the way it felt. And the truth is, I started that resentment way back on Lake Street. You know, I didn't know what this guy was going to do, but just because I was right doesn't mean I know what the hell's going on, you know. And how big a deal was it? Nobody got hurt, you know. He didn't hit me. I didn't hit him. That's justifiable anger. And I'm the only one that suffers for that, you know. Other people look at me like, what is wrong with this guy? What is wrong with you? And the truth is, there's plenty wrong with this alcoholic, about which plenty will have to be done if I'm to have a contented life and a meaningful sobriety. It tells me that in the literature. And that's still true today. You know, things have gotten a lot better. Stuff like that hasn't happened in a long time. You know, that was 10, 12 years ago. And I'm grateful for that. You know, if I trust God, clean house, and work with others, that's pretty simple instructions, you know. Don't drink, go to meetings, change everything about myself. Pretty simple instructions. You know, I'm building this relationship with a higher power, and I'm trying to align my will with His. You know, that's what I'm supposed to do. It tells me that in the 12 and 12. And it's in italics. That's almost as important as being underlined, you know. It's in italics. Our whole problem had been the misuse of willpower. You know, we had tried to bombard our problems with it instead of trying to bring it into alignment with God's will for us. So I was told to keep it simple. I got a pretty good idea most of the time what my higher power's will for me is today. One, first and foremost, don't drink, don't drug. Okay, all right. Second, treat other people the way I'd like to be treated. And if I do those two things, I got like 97% of this living stuff down. But it's the last 3% that causes me all the trouble these days. There's a woman at this meeting I go to here in Prescott who likes to say, it is what it is. The only problem I'm ever going to have is thinking that it should be different. You know? You know, I read the literature over and over again because I go to a lot of meetings and we read how it works. You know, I got it memorized. You know, the steps. You know, the traditions. We do it over and over again. When I was out there doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, expecting to not get a DUI, to not get caught, to not get in trouble, you know, I was doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. That's insanity. So I come to AA, and we do the same thing over and over again. And I get the same result. And that's sanity. That's sanity. It's very simple. This is a really good deal. If you're new, keep coming. Just stay. This is a safe place. And, I've got a life that I couldn't have imagined in my wildest, barstool fantasy, what I'm going to do. The truth is, when I was drinking and drugging, I was afraid to leave Burlington because that's where my source was. That's where my pitiful little life was. And, God gave me a brand new life. God gave me a second chance at a life I threw away. And I'm grateful for what I have today. And that's the key to happiness, is acceptance and being grateful for what I have. And when I do that, my life is pretty damn good. But when I get ruled by this maniacal brain, when I get tyrannized by fear that's all between my ears, that's where my disease wants me. My disease would like it if I would drink again, but it'll settle for me being miserable, and it'll settle for me being dead. So I'm grateful to be recovering in Alcoholics Anonymous today. I have this amazing life that when I get my head out of my ass, I'm pretty darn grateful for. I moved to Arizona a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, from Vermont. And I bought a little piece of land up in Ash Fork, and I'm building a tiny house. And I gave up this job with benefits and a career, and sold my house, and put everything I own in a truck and drove cross country to a 2-acre lot of land with nothing on it. And I have a house now that I built myself. I had help, but it's pretty amazing. And there's no way I would have been able to do that if I hadn't known that there's a little meeting in Williams, Arizona 4 nights a week that I can go to. And then I started branching out and coming down to Prescott, and met my sponsor here in Prescott. And there's a nice meeting in Prescott that I like coming to, once a week or so. And there's no way I could do that without this program, without a higher power, without all of you. I get drunk, we stay sober. And I can't have any of this without all of you. And you people teach me how to continue this relationship with my higher power, and that's what I got going for me today, So yeah, if you're new, just stick around and wait for the miracle to happen, because it will happen, and they'll continue to happen. Thank you so much for listening, and Kirk, thank you for asking me.